we just saw some of those images of it's not even, it's beyond a fan club. It's almost a quasi-cult following that he has. And
those pesky people out there in 20-degree weather. Those damn cultists. I actually, asked them why they were out there. I actually cared to ask, do you have a healthcare horror story?
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. CNN blasts supporters of Luigi Mangione as a twisted, bizarre cult. And the attorney for Luigi Mangione calls it outrageous that New York City Mayor Eric Adams and a New York City police detective were literally presenting evidence in an HBO documentary, evidence that had not been provided to Mangione's legal defense at that time. There's a whole lot of updates to tell you about this case. If you missed, we were outside. I was outside on Friday in the cold. It was about 20 degrees with the wind chill in New York City, interviewing dozens of supporters of Luigi Mangione, healthcare reform advocates. As far as I could tell, observing who was there, we were one of the few outlets actually out there trying to cover it fairly and give voice to folks out there, some who support Luigi Mangione and some who just want healthcare reform. So please, please, please support our reporting, on the ground reporting, for as low as $5 a month. StatusCoup.com/join. First, let me show you the bizarre scene of Mangione walking into the courtroom on Friday. I still have not got an answer why they had such a level of security and the vest that they had him wearing. Let's take a look.
Luigi, what do you think of the support for you outside?
Not a clue. Not a clue why they need so many guys with bazooka guns around this one defendant, why they had it. I mean, it looks like a bulletproof vest to me. I can't be positive. It all kind of seems for show, to really try and add some gravitas, try and make it seem like he's truly some type of terrorist threat to go with those terrorism charges. But it's totally bizarre and ridiculous, along with the perp walk a few weeks ago with the SEAL Team 6 level of security around Mangione and, of course, corrupt New York City Mayor Eric Adams to add in. Also, after the court appearance by Mangione, his lawyer spoke outside because there are several very alarming facts that lead Mangione's lawyer, his criminal defense team, to believe he cannot get a fair trial in the state, federal, or state of Pennsylvania, because he's being tried state of New York, federal charges, and state of Pennsylvania. There's a couple parts I want to play, but let's start with Karen Agnifilo-Friedman, his attorney, talking about a very alarming fact that Eric Adams went on an HBO documentary to basically laud Mangione as guilty and provide evidence that the prosecutors had not given to Mangione's attorneys.
Which brings me to the most important point that we made today, which is Luigi's right to a fair trial is being infringed upon because he is being publicly treated as guilty and as having the presumption of guilt as opposed to the presumption of innocence, which is what he is entitled to. And although of course, I understand the NYPD's need for a press conference before an arrest or after an arrest, which they did here. I didn't like it, but they did it, and I understood it. What I did not understand was how shocking it was that this week on HBO, in a documentary, I see the chief of detectives and the New York City mayor, full hair and makeup done, sitting down and giving an interview for television and talking about the evidence in Luigi's case, talking about police paperwork that we don't have, talking about forensics that we have not yet received. I guess we have now today, but I didn't when I was sitting there learning about the case, hearing an actor play Luigi reading from a journal that they say is Luigi's, and we have yet to receive it from the prosecution. And so it's outrageous that they have time to go and prejudice Mr. Mangione's ability to receive a fair trial and go out and make these statements, but not give this to us. And so we are concerned, because if the chief of detectives is telling everybody about all this evidence, and what if it ultimately gets suppressed because it was an illegal search and seizure in Altoona, Pennsylvania, how is he going to get a fair trial?
There's a lot of alarming things about that, but why have they just now provided the evidence? You know, prosecutors legally have to hand over what their evidence is to a defendant's attorneys. Why had they not yet provided it to Mangione's defense team, yet New York City Mayor Eric Adams and a chief detective had the evidence to go on HBO, and a potential jury is going to see that. A potential jury is going to hear that. So what's taking so long to provide the evidence? Kind of seems like stonewalling by the prosecution. And of course, a mayor, a police detective should not be in some documentary talking about evidence that would allude to someone being guilty, whether it's Mangione or anyone else, if that evidence has not been provided to the defense. That's just kind of 101 of, criminal defense, fair trial. Let's also talk about Mangione's attorney's concern over the fact that he's being held federally in federal detainment.
Luigi Mangione remains in federal custody, where he is being prosecuted in 3 jurisdictions: by the federal government, by New York State, and by Altoona, Pennsylvania. But he's being held in federal custody, and the Department of Justice has refused to allow him to be in state custody, despite the fact that they've all agreed that the state court is going to go first. Now, this is problematic for several reasons. Number one, the federal government is still considering whether to execute Luigi and considering whether to seek the death penalty. So we are fighting that simultaneously while going first here in state court. And it impacts our ability to meet with him before court, after court. He's constantly surrounded by law enforcement. He's in shackles. He was wearing a vest today, some looked like I don't even know what it looked like, but a very serious vest with his legs shackled and his arms shackled. And so he's being treated differently because he's being held in federal custody than any other person who would be facing serious murder one charges in New York State court. And I made a record in court today that I don't understand what this show of danger is for. When I go visit Luigi at MDC in Brooklyn, I sit with him. He is unshackled. He walks around freely in the visiting area. We sit in a room together without law enforcement hovering over us. But for whatever reason, here, despite all the law enforcement, they need him to be wearing this vest. They need him to be shackled, and they stand right over us, and we get no time with him. So he is being treated differently because of this unusual and, frankly, just the fact that he's being prosecuted by 3 jurisdictions for one event. It all is about one thing, one single event. So we object to that.
Quote, show of danger. And I think that's the main thing. Whether you agree or not with what Luigi Mangione allegedly did, a lot of people don't. A lot of people might not condone outright murder, but understand why he did it, think there was a greater purpose. Regardless, you know, when you're adding on terrorism, that is unprecedented. It's very dangerous. It's beyond a slippery slope for what the government and who the government could go after going forward for all sorts of things that are not murder. So it seems to me to kind of give some type of credibility to those terrorism charges. They're trying to make him the boogeyman. They're trying to make it look scary. They're trying to make him look scary. They're trying to, add a vest, have all these, armed police around him, when very few people I've seen feel terror. And I will add, as far as him being held in federal custody, there are federal charges against him, but a federal indictment has not officially been brought against him. So there are charges, criminal charges. A grand jury has not issued an indictment federally against him. So why he's being held in federal custody in New York, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe somebody can answer that to me. But seems odd to me that he's being held in federal custody in New York when an indictment has not been issued against him. And again, like she said, when they see him, he doesn't need to be shackled. You know, he could move freely, but in front of the cameras, got to make him look as scary as possible. We got to add, 20, 30, 40 police guys with, bazooka guns around him. It's absurd. But it's not only New York City police that are trying to make him look, scary or set a narrative. The good old folks at CNN are adding in to the fray. This was on Friday while reporting on the rally that, again, had dozens of supporters outside for him. Some were, straight up supporters of him. Some were, just folks out there that want healthcare reform. But there were dozens of people. I would surmise there would have been more, but it was the middle of the day. People were working. And it was also like with the wind gusts were like 30 miles per hour. It was 20 degrees out. I was freezing. Did have an ear infection. Still covered it. Didn't feel so great. But CNN wants you to know, if you are out there or you support him, that you are bizarre and twisted. Let's take a look at Jake Tapper's reporting.
Luigi Mangione, the man accused of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, returned to a New York courtroom earlier today, attracting dozens of supporters, bizarrely enough. Today's hearing is related to the accused killer's New York State case, where he faces an 11-count indictment, which includes murder and terror charges.
About 24 actually made it inside the courtroom, but when his attorney first entered the floor, that hallway where the courtroom is, that throng of supporters erupted into cheers and applause for her arrival. Jake?
This is twisted. What are the next steps?
Twisted. Bizarre that there's so many people out there supporting this murderer. Did CNN in that segment show any interviews they did with those supporters? Show any of them answering why they were there, whether they're just bizarro world individuals, whether they're twisted and they just love murder? Did they show it? I know there was a CNN reporter there because I was there, and I observed and listened as he was asking questions. And the main thing he wanted to focus on, as you'll see, is, do you support what he did? Not actually asking them, why are they there? Do they personally have like a healthcare horror story? Actually examining American, all political sides, all political ideologies, their disdain for the for-profit health insurance industry, the predatory for-profit health insurance industry. We wouldn't want to show that. Let's just call them twisted and bizarre. By the way, Jake Tapper has a net worth of $16 million. As he calls you, if you support Luigi or we're out there, twisted and bizarre. But Jake Tapper was outdone by CNN legal analyst Ellie Honig, who during a segment on the court case went a little further than calling you twisted and bizarre. Let's take a listen.
A lot of concerns about whether Mangione is going to get a fair trial.
Yeah, I think it was very fair of Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, our former colleague, now the defense lawyer, to raise those concerns. I mean, remember the day when he was perp walked? They flew him in on a helicopter. It landed on a dock. He's in shackles. Eric Adams is trailing behind him. I mean, that was an outrageous spectacle. She's right to raise it, but it's not going to be serious enough to undermine this case, to cause the case to be dismissed. I'd actually be more concerned the other way, the prosecutor side. I mean, we just saw some of those images of it's beyond a fan club. It's almost a quasi-cult following that he has. And I would be very worried about one of those people who has donated to him, who wore the same color as him today in solidarity. I'd be very worried about one of those people getting onto the jury.
It's more than a fan club. It's a cult. A cult. Those pesky people out there in 20-degree weather. Those damn cultists supporting an alleged murderer. Well, let me show you the reality, because I actually interviewed members of the cult. And instead of, trying to frame it and just, gotcha, do you support murder? I actually, asked them why they were out there. I actually cared to ask, do you have a healthcare horror story? We'll put the full link to the live stream from Friday of our on-the-ground coverage in the description. But let me know in the comments if this sounds to you like members of a, quote, cult.
Almost every single media person who's talked to me today has asked me, do I feel some sort of like moral, compromise from coming out to a murder trial? And to that I say, I'm not here for Luigi. I am taking it, the media is here, so I'm going to be here to talk to them about healthcare reform. And that appears to be what the initial murder was about. But you know what? They want us to protest peacefully. Then that's what I'm doing. You should actually report on that because, it's kind of hypocritical to say that. Here, sorry, what's going on? But it's just kind of hypocritical for them to say that, accuse us of being supporting of murder when they're refusing to ever talk about this healthcare system.
Same healthcare system that a lot of them take ads from and commercial money from.
Yeah, they've got blood on their own hands. So for them to be like coming out us and pointing their finger and saying like, oh, you support murder? I mean, look at your own news organizations. Like, look at who you get money from.
Quote, I'm not out here for Luigi. You, Jake Tapper, have blood on your hands. You, CNN, have blood on your hands while you take commercial money from United Healthcare and Pfizer and all the rest of the for-profit predatory health insurance industry. Cultist. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me show you another cultist that I interviewed. And unfortunately, folks at CNN maybe asked them a question or two, but it was mostly to try and push that framing of, do you support murder? Let's take a look at another individual out there. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it doesn't sound like a cult member to me.
I'm learning a little bit more about how the media is covering just large-scale events like this and the interests at hand. And I'm noticing a lot of media here today, thankfully not your channel, are going to the supporters and they're saying, do you support Luigi? And, oh, there's all these girls out here. Have you seen these like headlines where they're like, there's a lot of women at these protests? And apparently we got another one of these headlines today, and there's actually people of all ages and genders here, just trying to fight for healthcare, and like we're getting some kind of headlines that are just nonsensical.
So basically, them trying to frame it as a bunch of like groupie girls for Luigi.
Fangirls, which I think is ridiculous. I know people who are in the courthouse today, and it's everyone. It's truly everyone.
I don't really know many groupies per se that would stand out in 22-mile-per-hour wind gusts. It's about 20 degrees with the wind chill here, and you were out in the past.
I don't know. She was out there at the first hearing I covered. Nice woman. She had her own personal healthcare horror story. She had to get, I believe it was her appendix burst abroad, and it was relatively inexpensive because she was abroad when she went for an emergency care. But when she came back to America, she had to get the stitches taken out, if I recall, because there was fear of infection, and it cost her $2,000 that she didn't have. So that's part of why she's out there, because she's experienced a healthcare horror story and being scammed by this predatory system. But to CNN, that's a fan club, a cult. That's bizarre and twisted. Jake Tapper, net worth $16 million, has to tell you. Let me show you one more member of the supposed cult. Maybe they would say she is a member of a cult because she had, I don't know, pink hair or something. Let's take a listen.
It seems like they're trying to frame it as, oh, these people are just out here because it's like the Robin Hood thing, or they got the hots for him. I don't see that. I see people out here because they've either dealt directly with this for-profit predatory system, or they care about the wider public.
I think, yeah. I mean, obviously there was the people online who were commenting on his obviously attractive appearance, but I mean, can we see him right now? Are we looking at him right now? There's photos of him on that shirt over there. I can pull those up on his phone. Why would I stand out in 22-degree weather if this wasn't something that I cared about? You know, this is something that I feel very, very deeply passionate about, because this is something that has personally affected me, personally affected my loved ones. Basically, every single, like, you cannot talk to an American that has not had an experience or does not personally know someone that has not had a terrible experience with their health insurance industry. It's a running joke, and it shouldn't be. They shouldn't be allowed to just get away with this, and they get away with it because they're able to lobby politicians through lobbying firms, which is a huge issue with all of our policy in this country. It's the reason why we don't get anything done is because of lobbying. Because if you look at the way that other countries have their elections funded, in the UK, elections are publicly funded. So that's not saying they don't have similar problems, but lobbying firms are so powerful in the United States, especially when you consider how much money UHC, look it up, how much money UHC spends on lobbying every year versus how much of that money they could have spent, I don't know, actually accepting somebody's claim.
I don't know. I've been around the country for about a decade now, covering the predatory, fraudulent healthcare industry, worker exploitation, poisoned water, corporate sacrifice zones. I've interviewed about, I don't know, a couple thousand people on camera, way more off camera conversations I've had. That's about one of the most intelligent, free-thinking cult members I've ever heard. This is outrageous. If Luigi Mangione did this, it's alleged, he is entitled to a fair trial where it is not poisoned beforehand by New York City Mayor Eric Adams, HBO documentaries, CNN's bizarre, totally biased coverage. And you want to know something? Maybe they should wonder, why are so many people out there supporting a alleged murderer? Maybe there's a much bigger systemic murder going on, killing the masses. Maybe CNN could cover that. We will stay on this. We will continue to cover this case and developments, and on the ground as the case develops, cover what's going on outside the courthouse, as well as when the trial starts. Please support us. StatusCoup.com/join for as low as $5 a month.